Hello class, and welcome to today's English class for grade 8 on June 2nd, 2020. Today's subject is my interests. First, let's review some of the things we learned from last week's lesson. Do you remember how to answer the question, what do you like to do? What do you like to do? When you answer this question, you tell other people about things that you think are interesting. I like to play football. I like to draw. I like to read books. I like to listen to music. Or, if it's negative, you can answer, I don't like to. I don't like to cook. I don't like to go shopping. I don't like to anything you want to answer. Remember these when you're talking about your interests and when you're asking someone else about their interests. You can always use I like to or I don't like to. Today, we're going to look at some new words, and they are called adverbs of frequency. Today's new words are adverbs of frequency. Frequency means how often you do something. You can use frequency to talk about 1 time a day, 3 times a day, once a week, 3 times a week, once a month, once a year. How often you do something. That is the frequency. How often you do something is the frequency. So let's look at new vocabulary words that help us talk about frequency. You can see that I've made a chart, and it's at the very top is 100%. 100%. In the middle, it's only 50%. Only 50%. And at the very bottom, 0%. 0%. When talking about frequency, we use the word always when talking about something we do 100% of the time. When talking about something we do 100% of the time, we use the word always. Example, I always do my homework. I always do my homework. Always, for frequency of 100%. For 100%. The next word is a little bit less than 100%. It may be 80%, 75%, or maybe like 90%. Somewhere in here, we use the word usually. Usually is not the same as always. Usually is not 100%. It is less than 100%. For example, I usually come to class on time. That means almost all the time, but not all the time. Maybe sometimes I come to class late. Maybe 1 time or 2 times I came to class late. So I use the word usually. I usually come to class on time. The next word we use is sometimes. Sometimes can be anywhere from 20 or 30% all the way up to 60, 65, 70%. Sometimes, usually somewhere around 50%. 50%. Sometimes. Sometimes I talk in class. Example, sometimes I talk in class. Is that all the time? No, it's not. If I want to say I talk in class all the time, I would say I always talk in class. But in our example, we use the word sometimes. That means 50% of the time. 50% of the time. Sometimes I talk in class. For our next word, this is a very low percentage. Very low percentage. Hardly ever. Hardly ever. I hardly ever sleep in class. Does that mean you sleep in class a lot? No, it does not. If I hardly ever sleep in class, that's almost never. Almost never. A very low percentage. Maybe one time, maybe 2 times. I hardly ever sleep in class. And the last word, never. Never is 0%. Never is 0%. I never throw paper airplanes. I never throw paper airplanes. That means 0%. Never. So review these words that are adverbs of frequency. Always, usually, sometimes, hardly ever, never. Question. If I want to ask a question about frequency, I will ask, how often do you plus the verb? How often do you plus the verb? Okay, this is how you ask a question of frequency. How often do you? So you can answer with some of these words. You can choose one of these words to answer, how often do you do something? Here's an example. How often do you read a book? How often do you read a book? An example answer, I always read a book before bed. I always read a book before bed. Always. Do you remember what number percent always is? 100%. 100%. I always read a book before bed. Now, let's practice. Here's a question. How often do you go shopping? How often do you go shopping? Question number 2. How often do you play sports? How often do you play sports? How would you answer this question? What percentage would you use? Question. How often do you practice English? How often do you practice English? The correct answer should be always. I hope you say, I always practice English. Now, let's take a look at your homework for today. Number 1, write 5 questions to ask a friend using how often do you? Think of 5 questions you want to ask a friend. How often do you do something? You can use the examples from the video, or you can think of other questions as well. Write the questions down on a piece of paper, take a photo, and send them to the Facebook Messenger group. Number 2, review the vocabulary, the adverbs of frequency in the video, and complete pages 52 and 53 in the student book. Complete the exercises on page 52 and 53 in the student book. After you take the photo, send it to the Facebook Messenger group. Number 3, complete the extra grammar worksheet. I will send you the photos of extra grammar worksheet exercises. You can complete the extra grammar worksheet on your own notebook paper and take a photo when you're finished. Send it to the teacher or send it to the Facebook Messenger group. And finally, listen and practice VOA Learning English Lesson 6. Listen and practice VOA Learning English Lesson 6. I will send you the YouTube link in the Facebook Messenger. I hope you remember your adverbs of frequency: always, sometimes, usually, hardly ever, and never. But most importantly, I hope you always practice your English. Have a good day.